The officer stops. She looks at the container. Then she looks down at her inspection tablet. And for 11 seconds, nobody moves. The wind coming off Botany Bay pushes against the straddle carrier's frame, metal creaking under the gust. 40 meters away, the container sits suspended in the hydraulic arms. $40 million of unmanifested cargo inside. If she checks the manifest, the numbers won't line up. If she walks closer, she'll see the RFID tag was swapped 3 minutes ago. And if she runs the audit, your name will appear on every system log connected to the lift. The officer studies the container. Your heart slows to a strange, mechanical rhythm. Because this is the moment the entire operation was designed to survive or fail. She taps something on her tablet. Then she turns and walks south toward berth 26. Just like that, the container clears inspection at 0411. But what you don't realize yet is that moment was only possible because of something that happened 4 months earlier. A meeting that lasted 11 minutes. And a phone you never should have answered. 4 months earlier, you have been working Port Botany for 11 years. Long enough to understand containers the way surgeons understand instruments. Not by their weight, but by their consequences. A 40-foot box can carry televisions, or car parts, or furniture, but sometimes it carries something else entirely. And after 11 years on the waterfront, you can feel the difference before the manifest even loads. Your shift title reads, Senior Stevedore, Grade 4, which means 3 things. You sign off on TEU counts. You authorize crane lifts during high wind operations. And you carry a laminated liaison card from the Australian Border Force. That card lets you walk restricted apron zones without an escort. The officers know your face. They nod when you pass. For 11 years, that nod has meant something simple. Trust. But the thing about trust on a port this size is that it can be sold, even if you're not the one selling it. The man who sold it meets you in a corner booth of the Kagura RSL. Thursday evening, 2 glasses of tap beer. He sits down across from you without introducing himself. No handshake, no small talk. He simply places a manila folder on the table between the drinks. Then he waits. You open it because the silence makes it impossible not to. Inside are 8 photographs. Every one of them shows the same place. Your brother-in-law's freight company in Dandenong. Under the photos is a typed summary. 3 shipments, 18 months apart. Each container cleared through his company. Each container later connected to cargo the authorities classify as serious organized crime. You stare at the page because you didn't know any of this. But the folder isn't showing you information. It's showing you geometry. How close his problem sits to your name. How easily investigators could connect the two. And how quickly a clearance badge can disappear when that happens. The man watches you read. Then he slides a mobile phone across the table. Keep it charged. His voice is calm. When it rings, answer. That's all he says. He finishes his beer and leaves. The folder stays on the table. And in that moment, something changes. You haven't agreed to anything, but somehow the decision already feels made. For 3 weeks the phone doesn't ring. You carry it everywhere. To work, to bed, to the kitchen at night when you can't sleep. At first the silence feels like relief. Then it starts feeling like preparation. Because the longer you carry something like that, the more ordinary it becomes. And ordinary things stop feeling dangerous. That's the design. You just don't realize it yet. The call finally comes at 3:07 in the morning. You're sitting in the stevedore supervisor's office overlooking berth 24. Machine coffee. Wind pushing 28 knots across Botany Bay. The ship-to-shore cranes are already running slow cycles. Your night shift is 40 minutes behind schedule. 1,700 containers left to process before the morning inspection window opens. You're calculating the numbers in your head when the second phone rings. You stare at it for 2 seconds, then answer. The voice on the other end belongs to a woman. Flat, procedural, like a port authority system alert. She reads a container number. TCKU 44188832. 40-foot high cube. Origin Singapore. The system has flagged it for secondary inspection. But the hold is an error, and it must be resolved before 0530. The resolution requires only one thing. Move the container. Stack row J. Bay 14. To stack row C. Bay 6. Different manifest grouping. Different inspection channel. Once it moves, the hold disappears. Just like that. She pauses, then adds one more detail. There are 4 RFID tags attached to the unit. Each must be replaced. You have 120 seconds per tag. 4 tags. 8 minutes total. Then the line goes dead. No threats. No explanation. But the folder at the RSL already answered the question you didn't ask. What happens if you refuse? You stand at the office window, looking down at the container yard. Because there's something about the request that doesn't make sense. The port system doesn't generate high-priority inspection holds by accident. Someone created that hold deliberately, which means someone inside the system is watching it, waiting. The moment the container moves, the hold will disappear, and whoever built the problem will know you solved it, which means one thing becomes very clear. You are not the only compromised person on this waterfront. You're just the only one who still looks clean. And that distinction has a very short shelf life. You open the yard management system. TCKU 44188832 appears on the screen. Stack row J. Bay 14. Tier 3. But there's a problem. A container from Hapag-Lloyd is stacked above it. It has to move first. Minimum delay, 8 minutes. Too long. You stare at the yard camera grid. The southern apron cameras sweep every 90 seconds. But the J-stack perimeter has a dead angle, 17 seconds long. You've known that for 2 years. Because the camera contractor's maintenance schedule sits in the same shared drive as the shift rosters. And you've always been the type of person who reads documents not written for him. 17 seconds isn't long enough to move a container, but it's long enough to change a tag if you're already standing there. And that's when the realization hits. You're already planning it. The sequence builds itself in your head, step by step, efficient, logical, almost automatic. And that might be the worst part, because it means you're not deciding whether to do this. You're deciding how. But there's still one problem left. The straddle carrier operator. You need someone reliable, someone who won't ask questions. Tonight that person is running SC07, and you know exactly how to control him. 8 months ago, he nearly dropped a container during a lift, a serious safety violation. You buried the incident report, saved his license, saved his career. Now you're about to spend that favor, and the moment you realize that, something uncomfortable becomes obvious. You're already using the same currency the man at the RSL used on you. Debt. The Hapag-Lloyd container comes down first, wind pushing hard across the yard. Your operator holds the straddle carrier steady while you move into the camera dead angle. Handheld scanner ready. The tag swap is simple. 4 steps. Signal inhibitor. New RFID tag on the door seam. System sync. Then wipe the inhibitor cache. 120 seconds per tag. You finish the first in 94. By the 4th, your hands are moving faster. 81 seconds. No hesitation. And later, when you think back on this moment, that's the part that stays with you. Not the fear, not the guilt, the efficiency. Because the human body adapts to technical problems very quickly. Even when the technical problem is crime, the container moves. The system updates. At 0517, the inspection hold disappears. And just like that, the operation works. At 0600, the duty officer from the Australian Border Force walks the pre-cleared channel. He waves at you from 30 meters away. You wave back, and by then, TCKU 44188832 is already north of the airport, heading up the M5 motorway. What you don't understand yet is that tonight was never the job. Tonight was the audition. They never call to congratulate you. There's no message, no signal that anything changed. But 4 nights later, the second phone rings again, and this time the job is bigger. Month 2, 3rd week, 3 containers, 1 shift, 2 different inspection channels. You understand the reason immediately. Running 3 containers through the same gateway would create a pattern. Patterns get noticed. Patterns get audited. So the operation splits the movement across 2 different clearance channels. That prevents clustering, but it creates a new problem. Timing. Because each channel has different inspection windows, different camera coverage, different officers on rotation. which means tonight you're not managing one operation. You're managing two operations that must finish in the correct sequence. If the timing slips, the system will see it. You write the schedule on the back of a shift roster. Container 1 clears Channel A. Container 2 moves through Channel B 12 minutes later. Container 3 finishes through Channel A again, once the inspection window resets. 3 lifts, 4 hours, 0 margin for mistakes. At 05:58 the last container clears the gate. 2 minutes before the inspection window officially opens. The operation works, but something small happens inside the system, and that small thing will bother you for weeks, because the officer logging the gate clearance does it manually, not through the automated scanner, which means a human being typed the timestamp instead of the system recording it. That timestamp now lives in the audit trail. It probably means nothing. It will probably never be checked, but it exists. And once you notice something like that, you can't unsee it, because you've just learned something important. This operation doesn't produce clean outcomes. It produces outcomes where the mistakes are small enough not to matter. Yet, and the word yet starts carrying more weight every night. Month 3, second week, the message from the controller arrives earlier this time. Container number, stack coordinate, movement window. But now there's something new. A second phone number. You're instructed to call it 1 hour before the operation, just to confirm the route. You dial the number at 03:15. A man answers. You hear traffic behind him. He doesn't ask your name. He doesn't ask for details. He simply says one word, clear. Then the line disconnects. At first the call doesn't make sense. Then you realize what it means. Someone is watching the road, not the port. The road. The 40 seconds a truck sits at a red light on Botany Road is the most vulnerable part of the entire operation. Police heavy vehicle units run random stops there before sunrise, and now someone is watching that intersection, which means the operation has grown, because the container yard is no longer the only moving piece. There are watchers outside the port now, lookouts, drivers, people whose names you will never know. You're one node in a much larger machine. And strangely, that realization doesn't scare you. It makes the work feel professional, like you're a subcontractor on a large construction project, responsible for your section, blind to the rest. It's a disgusting comparison, but it's the one your brain chooses. The container moves that night without problems, but the idea stays with you. The operation has layers you can't see, and if there are layers you can't see, there are risks you can't calculate. Month 3 ends with 6 successful movements, 6 containers, 6 perfect sequences. The system hasn't reacted. No internal audit, no inspection delays, nothing. And that's when the most dangerous thing begins happening. You start believing the operation might actually work. But month 4 is where everything nearly collapses. And it collapses because of one person, the thorough one. You know her reputation before you ever meet her. She once held a bonded warehouse for 6 hours over a 4-minute timestamp discrepancy. 6 hours. Because the paperwork didn't line up. People like that exist in every system. The ones who don't stop looking. Tonight she's standing 40 meters from your container. The job itself should be simple. A refrigerated unit. MSCU 7731049. Declared cargo, perishable agriculture. Biosecurity channel clearance. Those channels run fast inspections, 30 seconds of wand scan, no manual container check. Then the gate opens. Clean. Predictable. You've run the numbers 3 times. Checked the camera sweeps. Briefed your operator. Everything is ready. Until the roster changes. 2 officers are suddenly pulled from the southern apron rotation. A coronial hearing. Emergency shift coverage, which means the officer standing near your container tonight is not the one you planned for. It's her. The straddle carrier lifts the container, hydraulics whining against the wind. You stand near the stack pretending to check a scanner log. She stops walking, looks up, looks at the container, then looks down at her tablet, and suddenly the entire operation feels fragile, because every justification you've been using to stay calm depends on one assumption, that the system will never test you in real time. Now it is. For 11 seconds nothing moves. The container hangs suspended in the straddle carrier frame. Your operator is waiting. The wind pushes harder across the bay. You start counting the seconds without meaning to. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The system that kept everything rational suddenly disappears. There's no logistics now. No operations. No professional distance. There's only the container and what's inside it, and the woman 40 meters away who might decide to check. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. She taps something on her tablet, then turns and walks away. Later you learn the notation had nothing to do with the container. She was logging a crane noise complaint from the previous shift. She never looked at the manifest. The container clears the channel at 04:11. But you don't move. For 4 minutes you stand in the sodium, lights near the J-stack perimeter, wind cutting across the yard, because something just broke inside your head. Not the fear, the illusion that this operation was controlled. Now you understand something much simpler. It only works until it doesn't. What changes after that night isn't your nerve, it's your calculations. Because from that moment on, every operation includes a new variable. Unscheduled officer rotations, and if you want to survive this work, you have to start predicting them. After that night, you stop thinking about luck. Luck is unpredictable. Systems are not. And if the operation is going to survive, you need to start treating the port like a system that can be mapped, studied, predicted. You begin paying attention to things you never needed to notice before. Inspection rotations, leave schedules, court dates, training days. All of it exists somewhere in the Port Authority's administrative calendar, a shared internal document most people barely glance at. But you do, because suddenly those entries mean something different. Every leave request changes, who stands on a specific apron. Every court hearing pulls someone off rotation. Every training seminar creates a gap in inspection coverage. You start memorizing the patterns, and before long, you're predicting them. Some officers follow procedure, some follow instinct, some follow nothing at all. You learn the difference quickly. 3 of them are predictable. They run inspections by the book, tablet scan, gate clearance, next container. 2 others are different. They look longer, ask questions, cross-check manifests. The thorough ones, you structure every operation around avoiding them, like crane operators avoiding wind gusts. You can't eliminate the risk, but you can reduce it. And after a few weeks, the predictions start working too well. By month 6, the operation has grown again. 12 containers, then 15, then 18, across 3 berths, through 2 inspection channels, with 5 different people in the mechanical chain. None of them know each other's names, and none of them know the whole picture. That's intentional. Because the safest structure for an operation like this is a series of isolated parts. Drivers who only know pickup points, operators who only know lift times, lookouts who only watch intersections, and you, standing in the middle of the system, the one person who understands how all the pieces fit together, which makes you the most valuable part of the operation, and the most dangerous one. Around this time, you start keeping records, not official ones. Those already exist in the port database, but something separate, private, because the operation has grown too complex to track in your head alone. Every movement, every container number, every timestamp, you log them all. One version matches the Port Authority's shift reports. The other copy is encrypted, stored on a small device inside a locked toolbox at a self-storage unit in Mascot. Why keep records of something like this? At first you tell yourself it's about control, documentation, professionalism, but the truth is simpler. You're building leverage, because if something ever goes wrong, information becomes the only currency left. The strangest part of the work is how quickly competence replaces fear. At the beginning, every lift feels dangerous. Every movement feels visible. But after enough repetitions, the process becomes mechanical, predictable. You start recognizing the rhythms of the port. When inspection officers get tired, when truck traffic thins, when the system audit logs refresh, there's a pattern to everything. And once you see the pattern, you can move inside it. But there's one risk you can never remove: pattern recognition. Port Botany processes more than 2 million containers every year. At that scale, your operation is invisible. A statistical rounding error. A handful of containers inside a mountain of cargo. But investigators don't search mountains. They search patterns. And if someone ever ran a chain of custody audit on the right cluster of dates, a signal would appear. The same inspection channels, the same time windows, and one name appearing in the supervisor log almost every time. Yours. You are the connective tissue of the entire operation. And connective tissue is easy to follow. The controller understands this, which is why every 4th month something changes. Carrier codes rotate, inspection channels switch, and one new operator appears in the chain. Someone you've never worked with before, someone you don't fully trust. Every time this happens, the system has to be rebuilt. New camera cycles, new inspection patterns, new risk calculations. For 72 hours you barely sleep, running scenarios in your head, walking the apron during breaks, watching officer rotations, recalculating everything. Because if the sequence fails, there won't be a second chance. But the real danger doesn't come from the operation. It comes from something much simpler. Familiarity. By month 7, the port starts feeling normal again. You know the inspection officers. You know their routines. Some of them even talk to you during night shifts. Weather, cargo delays, footy scores, ordinary conversations. The kind people have when they trust each other. That trust becomes heavier every time it happens. Because you understand something they don't. Their system works. Their inspections work. Their procedures are correct. They're just looking in the wrong places. One morning, an officer nods at you while walking the apron. Same nod you've seen for 11 years. But now it means something else entirely. It means they still believe you belong here. And the longer that belief survives, the more dangerous the situation becomes. Because eventually, every system asks the same question. Who keeps appearing near the problem? By the 8th month, you realize something unsettling. The operation no longer needs to threaten you. The folder from the RSL hasn't appeared again. No reminders. No pressure. You're still doing the work, even without it. And that's when the realization hits. The operation didn't just compromise you. It adapted you. You've become good at this. And that's the most dangerous development of all. But the system is still running. The containers are still moving. And somewhere above the harbor entrance, another ship is already approaching the port. One that will carry the next problem, the next container, and the next chance for everything to collapse. By the time the 8th month arrives, you've stopped counting the containers. Not because the number doesn't matter, but because the number has become normal. That's how systems fail. Not through sudden collapse, through gradual acceptance. The port still runs the same way it always has. Ships arrive. Cranes lift. Inspection officers walk the apron. Millions of tons of cargo move through the gates every year. From the outside, nothing has changed. But inside the system, small distortions have begun appearing. Nothing obvious. Nothing dramatic. Just tiny irregularities. A timestamp entered manually. A container clearing an inspection window seconds before it opens. A supervisor appearing in system logs slightly more often than expected. Individually, those things mean nothing. Together, they start forming a shape, and the danger of shapes inside data is simple. Eventually, someone notices them. Tonight the next ship arrives. The Maersk Sentosa. You're standing on the outer apron at berth 31 when she appears in the channel. The sky above Botany Bay is the color of a bruise. Not quite night. Not quite morning. Just that strange pre-dawn hour when the port feels suspended between shifts. The ship moves slowly through the harbor entrance, running lights glowing against the water. Even from a distance, you can tell she's heavy. Deep in the water, fully loaded, the port's automated system logged her manifest 6 hours ago. Thousands of containers on board, and somewhere inside that list is one number you already memorized. The controller sent it earlier that afternoon. Container ID, stack coordinate, movement window, everything prepared, everything calculated. The next operation begins in 38 minutes. The duty officer standing beside you stamps his boots against the cold concrete. You've walked the apron with him many times before. 22 years on the waterfront, longer than you. He watches the Sentosa approach the berth, squints at the waterline, then shakes his head slightly. Funny thing about ships, he says. Weight tells you everything. You don't answer, because you know he's right. You learned the same lesson years ago. Containers carry more than cargo. Ships carry more than containers. And ports carry more secrets than anyone outside them could ever imagine. The Sentosa reaches the berth. Docking lines drop. Tugboats pull away. Cranes begin sliding into position above the deck. The officer beside you studies the ship for a moment longer. Then he says something that makes your stomach tighten. She's riding heavy for a general cargo declaration. He nods toward the stacked containers. Someone's moving more than they're saying. He says it casually, the way experienced people say things when they're not trying to start an investigation, just an observation, professional instinct. He's talking about the ship. At least, that's what he thinks. You nod. Tell him manifests have been running heavy all quarter. He accepts the explanation. Most people do, because systems work best when the explanations are simple. The cranes begin their first lifts. Steel cables tightening. Containers rising from the deck one by one. Thousands of them. Red, blue, gray. Each one identical from a distance. Each one carrying its own paperwork, its own tracking code, its own story. And somewhere among them, the container you're waiting for begins moving toward the yard. 30 minutes pass. Then 20. Then 15. Your shift radio crackles with the usual noise. Crane operators confirming lifts. Truck drivers reporting delays. Inspection teams logging arrival time. All perfectly normal. All exactly the way the port is supposed to function. Which is what makes the situation so strange. Because the system is working exactly as designed. It's just being used for something it was never meant to handle. 10 minutes. The Sentosa's first container stacks are already halfway unloaded. You watch the cranes working against the dim sky. Methodical, precise. The entire port operating like a machine built from steel and routine. And inside that machine, your operation continues, moving quietly between the gears. The officer beside you checks his watch. Another patrol to start. Another section of apron to walk. He nods once and turns away, boots echoing against the concrete as he disappears toward the inspection lanes, leaving you alone on the outer berth. Somewhere behind you, a straddle carrier engine starts. Hydraulics warming, operators beginning the next sequence of lifts. And inside the yard, the container number waiting in your memory finally appears on the logistics screen, exactly where it was supposed to be. Exactly when it was supposed to arrive. The window opens in 6 minutes. Everything is ready. The operator is already positioned. The camera sweep is predictable. The inspection rotation is clear. Every variable accounted for. Every risk calculated, just like the dozens of operations before it. But there's one thing you can't calculate. The moment when patterns stop looking like coincidence and start looking like evidence. You stand on the apron watching the cranes work. Watching the containers move, watching the port function exactly the way it always has. And somewhere inside the system, a ledger already exists with your name in it. You just don't know who will open it first. The container reaches the stack. The operation begins. And the strange part is, you're already counting again.